Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you find yourself in the world. My name is Sophia Arend, and I'm the Global Blockchain Business Council's Communications and Content Lead. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the GBBC Virtual Members Forum. This is a bi-weekly webinar showcasing the innovative work of our members around the world. And today we have the pleasure to be joined by Sumit Kumar, founder of ESG Intelligence. They are a custom research firm focused on blockchain technology and sustainability, and he will be presenting on blockchain consortia trends and outlook. Just briefly before we begin, I'd like to introduce Sumit. So Sumit realized the potential of blockchain technology for enterprise and has been closely tracking the enterprise uptake of this technology since early 2017. Today, ESG Intelligence has an industry-leading database of enterprise blockchain adoption that tracks more than 2,400 projects and 350 blockchain consortia from across the globe. Sumit has spent his career designing and developing custom research solutions for a variety of clients that include large corporates, consultants, private equity firms, hedge funds, and rating agencies. We're so pleased to have Sumit here with us today, and we welcome your questions at any point during today's webinar. You can submit them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll take them following his presentation. Thank you, Sumit, for taking the time to join us today. We're very much looking forward to your presentation, and I'll now hand things over to you to begin.
Thank you, Sophia. Hello, everybody. As Sophia introduced, I am the founder of ESG Intelligence, and we've been focused on enterprise blockchain adoption and sustainability for the last 3 to 4 years. And today we are going to, right at the outset of the year, I think it's a good time to look back at the major trends in the blockchain consortia space during the last year, as well as delve upon how blockchain can help us build back better by creating sustainable business models. So let's start. So to quickly go over the contents, we'll be starting by discussing why blockchain consortia are important and their contribution to the larger blockchain ecosystem. We will also then look at a few trends that we observed during the last year and what we expect blockchain consortia to focus on going forward. Then, of course, we'll also touch a bit upon how blockchain can help us build back better and how consortia can focus on this aspect. And then finally, we'll give you an overview of what we do and how can we help organizations that are looking for comprehensive intelligence on enterprise blockchain adoption. So to begin with, let's look what is the contribution of consortia to the blockchain ecosystem. And the first question which arises is why blockchain consortia are required. And to answer that, I think there is a very relevant African proverb which goes by, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. So I think this really fits well with what has happened with the blockchain ecosystem in the last 3 years. Initially, there was a lot of excitement among the enterprises. Everyone wanted to test the technology with their own individual projects. A lot of them initiated pilot projects, proof of concepts, which were successful to a certain extent, but they did not a lot of them reached commercialization. And primarily it was because they did not take all the relevant stakeholders on board. So while this method of testing the technology was fast, it did not reach the destination that they wanted. So, but the ecosystem was quick enough to realize that going together will allow them to reach where they want to reach. And I think by that time, organizations like Hyperledger, Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and R3 had already demonstrated the value that consortia can bring to the table. And since then, 2018, consortia formation started to gain momentum. and it continues now. And I think considering the number of companies that are joining these consortia, I think the ball has already is rolling, and I believe that very soon this is going to be a preferred mode for enterprises to adopt this technology. So now to assess the value which consortia are bringing to the table, I think we need to first understand what are the requirements of the enterprise blockchain ecosystem at this moment. And so this is based on our tracking of the space, our discussion with industry leaders, some of our customers, prospects, etc. So the largest requirement of the ecosystem is use case development and commercialization. So as I said earlier, there were a lot of successful pilots and POCs, but they did not reach commercialization. So now consortia are trying to pick up those successful use cases, bring the relevant stakeholders together, and trying to take them to commercialization, so that the value can be derived out of this technology. The other requirement is basically of doing more research to identify and explore new use cases, because this is a transformational technology. And of course, a lot of enterprises have used the technology for low-hanging use cases like supply chain efficiencies, payments, etc. But there is a lot this technology can offer, especially when integrated with the other emerging technologies that are available. For example, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, 5G, etc. So research needs to go into identify other innovative use cases wherein blockchain can be used in sync or in integration with the other emerging technologies to take or to achieve digital transformation in different industries. Then another requirement is development of the technology and to address technical issues related to the blockchain itself. So while the technology has matured, for enterprise usage over the last 3 years, customization of this technology for specific use cases is obviously required, because there is this famous trilemma which the technology faces of scalability, security, and decentralization. And for every use case, a different mix of these three is required. So the relevant stakeholders need to sit together and identify what version of this technology is suitable for a particular use case, and that development needs to happen by bringing together the relevant stakeholders. Another important requirement is standards and regulatory clarity. So while there are several successful consortia that are developing or have managed to develop use case specific standards, there is still a requirement of a layer of technical standards where all these different consortia and products and projects that are there can interact with each other, so that interoperability is not happening because of the lack of technical standards. So focus needs to be on development of common technical standards. And of course, regulatory clarity is also required, because to take the projects to commercialization, conducive regulatory framework is required, for which government agencies, regulators need to be on board to lay out the regulatory framework. So that is another area where development needs to happen. And finally, while the numbers of enterprises participating in blockchain look impressive, there is still a lot of enterprises which are sort of adopting the wait and watch strategy. They are not willing to test the technology, join the consortia, etc. Maybe because of lack of awareness, education, etc. So I think significant effort needs to be made on those lines as well, so that the other enterprises can also join the different blockchain consortia and contribute to taking this technology forward and expediting the enterprise adoption. So now, after we have looked at these requirements, we are trying to we'll try to see how blockchain consortia are actually going to address most of these requirements. And for that, what we've done is we have classified the consortia that we are tracking into 4 categories, depending upon what they are focusing on. So the 4 categories are business-focused consortia, government-aided consortia, industry associations, and technology-focused consortia. So business-focused consortia are the most popular consortia, where different enterprises come together. Enterprises who are competing with each other, enterprises who are partnering with each other in the supply chain as a customer and supplier. In some cases, uh, you know, enterprises which are sort of in the regulatory role as well are participating in some of these consortia. So the primary focus of these consortia is use case development and commercialization. So these are basically, companies which have tested the technology for specific use cases successfully, and they realize that in order to take it to commercialization, they would need wider stakeholder engagement. And then those companies are trying to create consortia of those relevant stakeholders to develop that specific use case. Now, these consortia also focus on standardization that is relevant to that particular use case. And then if we look at it, in most cases these are for-profit consortia, but in some cases these are also non-profit consortia, wherein industry stakeholders are trying to develop a solution that will benefit the entire industry ecosystem, and they're trying to push it as a non-profit solution. Then the second category of consortia are the government-aided consortia. Now, these consortia are primarily fully or partially funded or aided by governments, grants, or academic institutions. And the primary focus of these consortia is research on specific use cases. So these are actually contributing to how blockchain interacts with other emerging technologies, trying to explore other nascent use cases, in an environment which is funded by government. So these are very important to take the technology forward and create a wider pool of use cases, which can then be picked up by business consortia. And other useful thing about these consortia are that they are generally time-bound projects. So there are time-bound updates, and they release their findings for everyone to see and pick up the important aspects that they discover from their research. So there is a less chance of these consortia going dormant after a certain amount of time. So the good thing is that they come out with a lot of research which is available for everybody to use, and it is time bound. So so there is no, as I said, dormancy which comes into play. The third category is the industry associations. So this is another important group of consortia, wherein existing industry associations are trying to test the blockchain technology, as well as there are a lot of blockchain specific industry associations that have been formed mostly in different countries to promote the adoption of this technology in their industry or in their country. So the primary focus for these consortia is to promote the adoption of the technology. They also facilitate research and development of new use cases by creating working groups within the association. And then these are also excellent platforms for standardization and interoperability efforts, because a larger group of stakeholders come together in the form of associations. So standardization and interoperability can be discussed at the industry level or the region level, and not only specific to use cases, which is happening in the business focused consortia. Finally, the last category, and one of the most important categories, is technology focused consortia. So their primary focus again is technology development. They're trying to uh, they're trying to work on how blockchain technology can be uh, can be made more useful for enterprises. They are also working on how blockchain technology interacts and integrates with other emerging technologies. So they are a great platform to explore integration with other technologies. And of course, as far as technical standards are concerned, these are the most important consortia which are driving the technical standards agenda. They're working towards creating technical standards for everyone to use. So together, these four type of consortia are trying to address all the requirements of the blockchain ecosystem. And what we are trying to also analyze now is what type of consortia are best for different type of enterprises, and which type of consortia are most conducive for different type of use cases to reach commercialization. So we'll be going forward, we'll be doing more research to identify and create such correlations, which will be useful for enterprises to identify which type of consortia they should join, and specifically which consortia are available in their region or industry, which they can join. Right. So with that introduction, now let's move on to the trends that we have observed in the last year related to blockchain consortia. So the first trend obviously is to look at the consortia formation. And the one word which we could figure out to summarize the consortia formation during the last year was resilient, because as we all know, it was a very difficult year for everybody. There were several industries which were disrupted. In fact, at the peak of the COVID crisis, IDC had predicted that that the enterprise spending on IT is going to decline by 5% globally. And with that context, if we've seen that the number of consortia has actually, number of new consortia that have formed during the last year has actually surpassed the number of new consortia that were formed last year. So it goes to show that enterprises remain confident of this technology and their investments in this technology. They are willing to explore new use cases. In fact, in many industries, specifically healthcare, this has actually created opportunity for companies to come together, form blockchain consortia, and explore how this technology can help them in various use cases related to the COVID response. So overall, we are tracking more than 370 consortia now, and out of them, 96 were formed last year. And as you can see, the momentum has been increasing every year, although in the last 3 years, it's been relatively stable, but we expect it to improve going forward. Now, to look at specifically which sectors were the hottest sectors during the last year, we have tried to create this graphic which gives the contribution of each industry in the total blockchain consortia that have been formed. And as we can see, banking and financial services remains the largest contributor. Uh, Overall, it is contributing 24%, to the overall consortia, that the number of 371. But during the last year, it contributed only 20% of the consortia. In fact, most of the industries contributed less because they were impacted by the COVID crisis. But there were a few industries which registered growth in the number of consortia that were being formed last year. And as I said, healthcare was the hottest sector. There were several new consortia that were formed. In fact, 14% of all consortia which were formed last year were from the healthcare sector. Food and beverage and automotive were also other sectors wherein we saw a lot of activity. So healthcare, as we said, the prime focus was on COVID-related consortia. There were a few of them which came together to establish contact tracing mechanisms, healthcare passports, etc. For the food and beverage sector, it is the supply chain related use cases which continue to attract enterprises to come together in form of consortia and make their supply chains more traceable, establish provenance of products, etc. And the automotive sector is basically driven by two large themes, which are electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. So there is a lot of activity around how blockchain technology can help with improving the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And the other aspect is how blockchain technology can help in development of the autonomous vehicles, storing information related to registration of vehicles, interaction of data amongst different stakeholders, etc. So these are the three big industries which are driving the adoption and formation of consortia. Then looking at the use cases on which uh, these consortia are focusing on, we find that most of them are concentrating on supply chain related projects. In fact, out these total 371 consortia, there are 511 projects that are being that they are undertaking at this moment. And out of those, 72 are supply chain related. Then there are industry specific use cases which are focused on applications related to a particular industry. For example, in the energy sector, there are consortia that are focusing on peer-to-peer energy trading. Then there are data sharing related projects which are also uh, gaining momentum, standardization, document management, etc. So this basically gives you the primary use cases on which industry is focused on uh, within blockchain consortia. Then let's also try to look at the companies which are which have joined these consortia. So overall, there are more than 7,700 unique uh, organizations that are members of these 371 consortia that we are tracking at this moment. And among the consortia that were formed in 2020, more than 1,000 companies joined these consortia. So the graph here tries to analyze the size distribution of companies which are joining the consortia. So as you can see, uh, the smaller companies which have less than 50 employees are, have the maximum proportion of companies which are members of blockchain consortia. And during 2020, we see that these smaller companies, in fact, saw an increase in participation, whereas companies which have between 50 and 100, 50 and 1,000 employees saw some decline in participation. Then we also try to see the type of companies which are joining these consortia. So there are 5 categories in which we've divided the companies: private companies, public companies, non-profit organizations, academic institutions, and government organizations. And among these, clearly private companies are the ones which are most active. In terms of trends for last year, I think the significant thing to note is that public companies saw a 4 percentage point decline in participation, but it was more than made up by active participation of non-profit organizations. Then if we look at the regional distribution of companies that are joining these consortia, we see that Europe is the region from where most companies are joining these consortia. On an average, 39% of the companies come from Europe, but in the last 1 year, 45% of the companies that joined were from Europe. But more significantly, we saw a significant decline in the percentage of companies from America that joined. In fact, it's Americas which includes America, Canada, and the Latin American countries as well. So this region saw significant decline, from 32% on an average to 21% in the last year. Now, beyond these statistics, there were some observations that we made, and these generally came from our discussions with our customers, prospects, participation in some industry conferences, etc., related to blockchain consortia. So there are three important things that we would like to share with everybody. First is related to the use case selection. So we've seen that there are a lot of business consortia that have been formed with an objective of exploring how blockchain technology can be used in a particular industry. And most of them, in fact, not most, but significant number of them have not shown a lot of progress, right? So, and that is primarily because it is difficult for competing stakeholders to agree on many use cases. So the use case selection becomes very important when companies come together and form consortia. They need to identify use cases uh, which are beneficial for everybody, and they should also not require any particular stakeholder to give up their strategic advantage by sharing data which they do not want to share. So if we apply these two categories, several use cases are ruled out, and that is the reason some of the consortia are not able to move forward. So use case selection becomes very important. The second important aspect is having a third party as a convener to the consortia, because of participation of competing competing companies from our industry, companies which have a supplier customer relationship. So there can be disputes which can arise within consortia. Can be difficult to arrive at consensus if there is if there is no third party. So what many consortia are now doing is they are trying to onboard a convening third party in the form of a technology provider. It can be a nonprofit, can be a government regulator or an academic institution. And what we've noticed is that this helps everybody arrive at consensus. This is a party which, especially if it's a neutral actor, which can listen to everybody and then try to drive consensus, can help consortia move forward in a faster way and in more effective way. And then the third is that the consortia need to be inclusive. So it can happen that in a value chain, a certain group of enterprises which are competing with each other try to form a consortia, and they try to adopt an exclusive. Uh, they try to make their consortia exclusive, not discuss with other stakeholders. Uh, and when that happens, it is difficult for the consortia to move forward, because eventually, when they apply that use case, they will have to deal with those stakeholders. So it is very important to start with a wider stakeholder group. And when I say start, it does not mean that they have to be shareholders in that consortia, but the consortia needs to have discussions with all relevant stakeholders While this can increase the initial effort, but in the long term, this will have its advantage because it will mean wider acceptance for these consortia. So these are three important aspects which companies should keep in mind when they are joining a consortia or when they are forming a consortia, and this can help them address some challenges they face. Of course, there are other challenges arriving at governance models, legal things, but they depend upon use case to use case and participants. So they have to be dealt with on a case basis. But these are generic observations that we were able to make. Then finally, looking at the outlook of what we can expect blockchain consortia to do during this year and going forward. So we have tried to classify this into four categories. First is that blockchain consortia need to focus on building back better. So blockchain is a transformational technology which can revamp entire business ecosystems. So when consortia are coming together, they need to leverage the collaboration that is happening to address not only short-term business issues, but also sustainability themes, which will make the entire ecosystem more sustainable for everybody. So I think when companies are spending time, resources uh, into these consortia, they need to have a wider view of the sustainability themes as well, and contribute to exploring how the technology can be used for sustainability related projects. And one aspect of it is going to be uh, bringing the customer on board, because within sustainability, what blockchain offers is few use cases which can allow uh, customer to be empowered using provenance. uh, Companies can eliminate counterfeit goods. Companies can tell the stories of their sustainable initiatives to the customers, and customers are willing to pay extra for sustainable brands, sustainable products. So I think this can be a very important theme which companies need to work more on, and we'll discuss this in the next section, which is building back better. The second theme which they need to focus on is standardization. As we discussed earlier, this is a challenge. Use case standardization is already happening because consortia, when they are coming together, they are operating in a business environment. They know the existing standards, so they are able to create standards related to those requirements. But larger technical standards are needed for interoperability of these consortia silos that are being created across the globe. So work needs to be done on that. And then there are regulatory and legal standards that are needed, for which participation of governments and regulators is required. So we believe more and more regulators and government agencies will participate in these consortia so that they can learn from what is happening, the advantages which the technology can bring, and then create regulatory frameworks and legal frameworks to create a conducive environment for the technology to commercialize. And here I think the work that GBBC is doing through their global standards mapping initiative, where they are collaborating with World Economic Forum to create a platform where companies, be it enterprises, regulators, everybody can access the developments that are taking place with regards to technical standards as well as legal and regulatory standards, is a very important tool which I think everybody can access to come up to date, to stay up to date about what's happening with regards to standards. Then the other aspect which we already touched upon in standardization is higher government participation, because government participation in consortia needs to go beyond funding some consortia for research. We have seen examples where regulators or government agencies are a part of the consortia. It is easy to reach commercialization in those projects because government by itself can act as a mediator, which everybody can trust, and they can also create a conducive legal framework. And this, in fact, is a great opportunity for developing and underdeveloped countries to digitize using efficient technology, because uh, in countries where digitization has not happened, they can explore the benefits which other countries are gaining from using blockchain technologies, and they can start by creating their digital systems on the blockchain technology, so that they start with a more efficient technology. And again, for this, I think the GSMI platform works brilliantly. It can create a platform where everybody can get access to what's happening with the standardization. And finally, better integration with the fourth industrial revolution technologies or the other emerging technologies that I discussed earlier, IoT, AI, etc. So companies need to uh, do more research to find out how blockchain can work with these technologies to create digital transformation ecosystems. Now, finally, we come to the area where we discuss how blockchain can help us build back better. And if we all remember, at the peak of the COVID crisis, similar images were seen across the globe, where people were comparing how cleaner the environment has become due to the lockdowns that were being imposed, and it created a significant amount of discussion about sustainability and how uh, less resources should be used to create more sustainable ecosystems. But the discussion on sustainability has not started after the COVID crisis. Sustainability has been gaining momentum over the last decade. Various stakeholders have increased their interest in sustainable business models. If we look at governments, we saw historic participation in the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. In fact, after the COVID crisis, European Union, Canada, and other countries as well have already announced plans and fundings for building back better, creating more sustainable ecosystems after the COVID disruption. So governments are on board. They want to promote sustainability. Investors have, I mean, if you look at the trend of ESG investing, it is a very convincing graph. The assets allocated to ESG related investments has continued to increase. In fact, according to the recent updates, sustainable investing accounts for 1/3 of the total assets under management in the United States. And globally, the investments in ESG focused funds surpassed 1 trillion for the first time in 2020. So these are all signs that companies that are adopting sustainable business models are, likely to get approvals from governments. They are likely to get investments. And finally, the most important stakeholders are the customers. And there are several studies to indicate that customers are now willing to pay more for sustainability, or rather sustainable products, or buy services of companies which are running sustainable operations. So according to a recent survey, 74% of the consumers are willing to pay more for products that use sustainable packaging. Similarly, products that market sustainability aspects are selling faster than those that use conventional marketing. I mean, this was established by a study conducted by the New York University. Uh, and if you go onto the internet, you'll find several studies which indicate that customers realize the importance of sustainability, and it is upon the firms to address that requirement. And in today's information age, I think it is important for companies to go to the customers and tell them their sustainability stories. And blockchain, as I said earlier, can allow that information exchange to happen in a way that fake news does not reach the customer. I mean, we all know that there are several brands which promise sustainability credentials, which are difficult for customers to establish. But with blockchain, that can be addressed. So the sustainable companies can be rewarded by the sustainability premium, which the customer is now willing to pay. And finally, because of these three dimensions, businesses are also responding. The penetration of sustainability reporting is increasing every year. I mean, we have been assessing sustainability performance of companies since 2012, and the number of companies that were reporting their sustainability performance has seen tremendous increase since then. And in fact, if you look at the SAM yearbook, which tries to classify sustainability leaders in different industries, you will see that a lot of companies from emerging markets now are the sustainability leaders in their respective industries, which is very convincing to see, and which goes to show that companies in emerging markets are also taking to sustainability reporting. And another, evidence of businesses responding to the call of sustainability is that in August 2019, the Business Roundtable, which has more than 180 CEOs on their board, redefined the corporate purpose to become more inclusive and promote sustainable growth. So that goes to show that companies are also equally inclined towards sustainability. Now, blockchain as a technology has already demonstrated several areas where it can be used to achieve or to create sustainable business models. Here are a few examples that are listed: electric vehicle charging infrastructure, microfinance, tracking of donations to ensure they reach the intended parties without corruption, incentivizing sustainable agriculture, recycling waste, etc. So there are several pilots and POCs that have been successfully done in all these areas. And there are several consortia that are also focused, that have picked up these use cases and are working towards commercialization of these use cases. But beyond this, what we want to indicate is that the collaboration which is happening through blockchain consortia has, gives a bigger opportunity to drive the sustainable business models even more outside of these use cases which have already been established. And why do we think this is? Because right now the collaboration which is happening, the prime objective is to scale the tested blockchain projects by bringing key stakeholders on board, generally to address the key pain points for the industries and to explore new use cases, etc. But most of the consortia are chasing use cases that address business inefficiencies and are not trying to experiment with use cases which can further sustainable business models. And for this, I think what needs to happen is that stakeholders within organizations which are dealing with sustainability should participate in these collaborative discussions that are taking place at blockchain consortia, so that they can bring to the table the sustainability opportunities within their industries, and they can leverage the collaboration to create use cases which will promote sustainability within their ecosystems. So this will basically mean that it will increase the number of use cases which similar consortia can experiment with, and it will also obviously create a sustainable ecosystem, because when sustainability leaders from all the companies which are operating in a particular business ecosystem come together and maybe they can also include some external sustainability consultants. They are likely to come up with new areas where blockchain technology can address sustainability, or other sustainable business models. So I believe going forward, if the consortia can invite the sustainability stakeholders within their organizations to the consortia discussions, and try to widen uh, the use cases which they are experimenting with to include some sustainability focused use cases, it will benefit the entire ecosystem. And as we have earlier established, sustainability is something which is selling. So I think it will be beneficial for everybody. And in the long run, it will increase the return on investment of all participating members of that consortia. So with that, we end the three broad topics, and now finally we come to what ESG intelligence is doing, and how we can help companies which are looking to track the developments of the blockchain, enterprise blockchain space. So blockchain consortia intelligence platform is our product which we have launched in the second half of last year. Uh, this basically gives you a cloud-based access to all this information on more than 370 blockchain consortia, more than 7,000 companies which are participating in these consortia, and more than 2,400 senior business leaders, business and technology leaders, which are driving these consortia. So this platform can be very useful for enterprises, for blockchain vendors, consultants, as well as academic institutions which are conducting research. So apart from this, we also give you access to a pivot-based dashboard, which allows you to identify consortia focused on specific use cases to facilitate your research. And of course, a resource library which has close to 100 research reports, expert interviews, and on topics related to enterprise blockchain adoption. And all this information is on a cloud-based platform. It is managed by a research team, which has been doing this for the last 3 years. An important part of our work is standardizing this information, because the source of our information is entirely publicly reported information. So an important part there is to standardize the information which is reported by various organizations on their websites through press releases into a format which can be analyzed easily by everybody. Now, finally, how can different stakeholders benefit from our platform? Blockchain vendors can use this platform to stay updated about developments that are taking place in the enterprise blockchain adoption space in different industries and geographies, or maybe related to a specific use case for which they are developing the technology. They can stay updated about the companies that are joining blockchain consortia focused on specific use cases or from a particular industry or geography, as well as identify senior decision makers at various consortia to learn even more about the use cases that they are working with, how the consortia is progressing, challenges they are facing, how they are dealing with the challenges, etc. Similarly, enterprises can also benefit by keeping themselves updated about developments related to enterprise blockchain adoption in their industry or in their geography. They can also learn from what various consortia have achieved from different projects that they have started before they actually start their journey. So if an enterprise is not a member of a blockchain consortia looking to join consortia, I think our platform can be a good starting point for them. And then they can also identify the most pertinent consortia that their company their company should join. Finally, the academic institutions and researchers can tremendously benefit from our platform, as they get access to all the information on blockchain consortia, the type of companies that they are joining, the use cases they are focused on, which technologies they are using, how they are progressing, etc. Which will definitely cut down on their information gathering time on their projects. And we also offer discounted pricing for academic institutions, so they can also get benefit of that. Yeah, so this was basically all from my side. If you have any more questions, you can contact me through these coordinates, and I'll be more than happy to answer. But if you have any right now, I think we can answer them online.
Hi, Sumit. Thank you so much for such an informative presentation. That was excellent to hear the trends and that you've gathered from your extensive analysis of blockchain consortia. We will absolutely share your contact information with the folks who joined today so that they can ask you their questions directly, just in the interest of time. And for everyone watching today, thank you for joining us. We will circulate a recording of this presentation, and it will be available on GBBC's website and YouTube. Again, thank you, Sumit, so much for your time today, and we will certainly put folks in contact with you so they can ask you any questions directly. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Sophia.